All right, welcome everybody. We've got another killer Metal Monday.
Not today's actually decent, right? Like I mean,
I meant that in a good way.
yeah,
Killer,
like
like the markets are
not
still.
blood red every across the
There's a little
board.
mix.
Like,
It looks like Christmas lights, with these green and
yeah,
red.
yeah, a little
You know?
bit on the PGM side, but
But everything
you
else
know,
is like
everything else is in there. Is like at least copper,
up a
is hanging around
penny.
that 407, 408 range, and
Mm-hmm.
I think aluminum's the only like base metal I see that's really, and it's even that didn't,
It's
it's
all
not getting crushed.
it's
It's just,
sideways really.
yeah, it's not.
It's down a fraction of a penny.
So in all reality, we're within reason.
Nickeled up a little. I mean, but nickel and aluminum really did take a pretty big dip the last like 30 days. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
So, I mean, it is what it is. Like, and we adjust accordingly, move forward. Ferris is
Ferris is up, man.
Ferris is looking a lot better.
It's you're gonna see anywhere from 25 to in the 60, 70 range up in like some grades. Like I think, like not necessarily on the West Coast or over in
Maybe
our neck of the woods,
back
but
east,
Midwest,
Midwest.
for sure. Depends on if you've got bushling or number one type material, then you're gonna get a good premium for that this month.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I think the ferrous market is looking pretty strong, and I tend to believe, at least today, it could change, but I tend to believe that April could look the same way. Not necessarily up again that much, but stay fairly healthy, fairly strong.
Because I've just been waiting. Every time we see 3, 4, 5 months of ups,
Yeah,
you waiting for that month, and it might not be a killer, but you might be waiting for that month where it to dip a little. But the way everything I've been reading, everyone I've been talking to, like it doesn't seem like that dip's coming. And like you said, that could change next week.
we talked about it. Chad and I talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is relative to the market you're selling into. If you're an export guy, or if you're selling into, say, rebar mills or whatever, which is primarily a lot of what our consumer base is, we're not going to get that premium that the hot roll coil, cold roll, the slab plate plants are getting, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're just because that material is in a little bit more demand than say rebar right now, which you're probably noticing with construction starting to slow down. I think that the commercial construction, your big rebar, users, but there's still a fair amount of rebar that goes into residential construction. And if that market slows like it is right now and continues to slow, then rebar homes or something like that you may not get the big premiums that the other steel mills are getting right now. So, but at the end of the day, take it, take the upside that you can get, because who knows how long it lasts. But if you're in the Midwest, you better be fighting for every dollar because the pricing on new steel is up in a big way.
When did it go up 100?
Well, I
Some
mean,
spots.
in some spots it's really up like say anywhere from 5 to 700
Oh wow.
in the last say, well, from the bottom, be like I would say like November of 22 ish when it kind of bottomed out to it started to climb back.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you're still up. I mean, anywhere from that 5 to 6, 700 bucks, and you haven't seen that on the scrap side, like, nor will you get to see it.
No,
Like,
no, you'll never see that. Big
you'll
swings
never
in the
get
scrap.
that. I mean, the steel mills are back to, eating prime rib again.
They're off the ramen noodles. No more McDonald's.
Well, I don't think they ever got to ramen noodle stage, but I think that their margins definitely got squeezed a little bit. I mean, but they're historically wide margins, right? So you have to take that into consideration.
Any news on PGMs?
Not really. I mean, nothing earth shattering. I think if automotive or as automotive picks back up, I think that that will see some benefit. I think I was just reading an article on Kitco last Friday, and they were talking about one of your big PGM miners was talking about that they produced less volume of material this year than they had in the previous years, and I think that's kind of true across the board. Um, Palladium is probably still under pressure. It's probably going to be under pressure. Platinum, because it's so such a big part of, say, even the hydrogen market, and like, I think that there's opportunity there. And rhodium, just because it's so under mined, or there's only it's
really scarce.
it's
right?
a lot more scarce than palladium. There's just a lot less out there. So that market really is why it swings so hard, is just because it's not as liquid. It doesn't move up and down as or doesn't. There's not as much volume moving through on the trade side, so the moves are bigger, right?
So any big sell or buy can
We'll
really
run it
move the
one way
needle,
or the other, right?
Okay.
Or any perceived strength in that market, you get a few, a series of strong orders. All of a sudden, you can see it climb, pretty quickly. So PGMs, I mean, and a lot of that's dollar dependent, right? So, but also industrial PGMs, platinum, palladium, that that's also kind of economic driven as well. So there's so many factors, that play into PGMs that you have to kind of keep an eye on and see what they're doing.
And even back to copper, here in Idaho, I met with two owners of big electrical companies that they do residential and commercial. They said that they didn't see a lot of orders coming in the last 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
but it's picking back up. They just told me that they're out hiring again. So they think in our area some of that building is going to open back up, and we'll see if that really comes.
Like I said,
comes
we
into
talk
play.
about it all the time, but a pause in the interest rate, not necessarily a break on the downside, but just a pause. One of the guys here we were just talking about earlier, that he's buying a new house, and he got his interest rate on a 30 years 6%, right? Which he's like, gosh, it seems high. I'm like, well, my first house in 2005 into 506 early was at 6.5%. And my parents were like, that's a great interest rate, right? And because they were used to 10, 12, 14, 15, coming out of the 80s and late 80s. And so for them, for me at 6.5 on a 30 was like, damn, that's good. So I was kind of trying to express to him, like, you're not in a bad position.
It's all what you compare it
now,
to.
my house, when I bought it, was $140,000, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I was like, oh, that's a lot of money, 6.5%. But I was single, and I didn't have any bills and no kids and yada, yada, yada. But it's all relative. It's all relative to, what you're doing, what you're making. But I also only made $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people right now, like, you're not starting a management type position at, $40,000 a year coming out of college, or with, whatever, education level. Maybe you are. It just depends, but it's a lot different.
Well, it's just like anyone that asks me about pricing. They say, "Was that good?" I'm like, "Well, it's hard for me to even answer that. Like, I think it's good.
Yeah.
But I've been doing this for 13 years,
Yeah.
To me, it's good. Now, if you want to look at it through a lens of, 6 months, you might think some of it's shitty,
Yeah.
or a year. But so it's all about the lens, because my parents bought their house, the same thing. I think it was like 15, 16%. So when we got our first one, they were like, "That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
crazy." And I think, so it's all perspective. You
Interest,
just adjust with the
interest
numbers.
rates will hurt. Higher interest rates, I think, hurt the, people trying to build an asset base. Like, it really does. Your first-time home buyers, your people with, that are struggling or have high credit card debt. Those interest rates really hurt those, and I think that hurts them more than, even, in my opinion, like a little bit slightly higher inflation.
Yeah.
But I'm not no economist. I'm just a guy that buys and sells scrap metal.
But
So,
we can see commonalities in
yes,
two different types
yes.
of
You
markets.
got to pay attention to what's going on in our business, because there's a lot of factors that affect, the day to day.
Well, thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week.
All right. Have a great week.
Thanks.